Well, yesterday marked the 8th and final day of Hanukkah. Now, if you're a non-Jew like me, when you were growing up, you probably didn't know a whole lot about Hanukkah and what it represented. And frankly, you probably felt bad for your Jewish friends in the neighborhood because Santa wouldn't be coming down their chimneys. As a kid, I used to think Hanukkah was just a curious little 8-day sideshow on the road to Christmas. Even though I had a lot of Jewish friends and I was a die-hard supporter of Israel, Hanukkah really had no meaning to me. Well, a few years ago, a friend encouraged me to research the story behind Hanukkah. And so I did. And I was blown away. The story of Hanukkah has meaning for every freedom-loving American watching this show right now, who's concerned that we are losing our country to sinister forces. It makes no difference whether you're Jewish, Christian, or agnostic. Hanukkah matters. Because the story of Hanukkah is the story of the Maccabees. It begins about 170 years before the birth of Jesus. At that time, Israel was part of the Greek Seleucid Empire, which was ruled over by a mad, Jew-hating king named Antiochus Epiphanes. In the year 169 BC, his forces invaded Israel. They sacked Jerusalem, slaughtered thousands of Jews, murdered women and children in the streets, and sold many thousands more into slavery. But that wasn't all. At the time, the Hellenistic culture of the Greeks dominated much of the known world, and Antiochus demanded that Israel must also be Hellenized. That meant, above all, destroying the Jewish religion and any worship of the God of the Bible, the God of Israel. Antiochus desecrated the Holy Temple in Jerusalem and transformed it into a shrine to the Greek god Zeus. He banned circumcision among Jewish babies, and any mother who insisted on circumcising their male child was executed. Observance of the Sabbath, Shabbat, was banned. So was any study of the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. In fact, those activities were punishable by death, and Torahs were burned. Folks, this was brutal, horrible oppression, and the worst kind of religious persecution. In the tragic and often bloody history of the Jewish people, this period has to rank among the worst. And to make things even tougher for the God-fearing Jews of Israel, some influential Jewish elites at the time were all for this Hellenization drive. They wanted to break the ancient covenant between the God of Israel and the people of Israel and make Israel just another Hellenized pagan land under Greek rule. Tradition would be smashed, a new order would be ushered in, and stubborn Israel would yield to the ways of what was then the international community. They would become just another nation, nothing exceptional. But then a few good men stood up and said no more. The Maccabees. A priest named Mattathias, along with his 5 sons, fled into the countryside and began to rally an army of Jews who would not accept Greek tyranny and the devastation of their religion, their culture, and their country. Maccabee in English means hammer, and the Maccabees earned that nickname for a reason. Mattathias and his sons were the hammer of Israel. Their battlefield exploits against the Greeks became legendary. In particular, Judah Maccabee, who became their leader after his father's death, was a tactical genius on the battlefield. The Maccabee armies were ridiculously outnumbered and outgunned, but they won victory after victory, and their faith in God was unshakable. Under Judah Maccabee, they recaptured Jerusalem, rededicated the temple, and lit the menorah once again. That's what Hanukkah commemorates. It represents the victory of freedom over tyranny. It took the Maccabees over 20 years, but finally, they kicked the Greeks out of Israel once and for all and reclaimed their land. Folks, you need to read both books of the Maccabees. Now, some denominations consider these 2 books divinely inspired and include them in the Old Testament of the Bible. Others don't. But what everyone can agree on is that these are riveting and accurate historical accounts of what went down in Israel at that time. So read them. just as history. Even if you're a non-believer, trust me, you will be inspired. And as you read them, the American Revolution will come to your mind. Think about it. A rebellion against foreign tyranny by a ragtag group of courageous, God-fearing men. Just like the Maccabees, the American revolutionaries also had to contend with the naysayers and the loyalists to the throne. And just like the underdog Maccabees, they prevailed against all odds. And that's not the only connection. There is a bust of Judah Maccabee on display at West Point. That's how influential he was as a commander and a warrior. My friend Yoram Ettinger, who's a former Israeli ambassador and an expert on the America-Israel relationship, points out that the Maccabees' battle cry was, "Whoever trusts God, join me." Sounds a lot like "In God We Trust," huh? Ettinger says that Ben Franklin, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson were inspired by the Maccabees when they proposed rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God as the official American seal. He also wrote that Paul Revere was called a modern-day Maccabee. There's even a story that has never been confirmed that a Jewish soldier shared the story of Hanukkah with George Washington at Valley Forge when things looked very bleak. According to the story, Washington was said to have replied, "Perhaps we are not as lost as our enemies would have us believe. I rejoice in the Maccabees' success, though it is long past. It pleases me to think that miracles still happen." You know, the first day of Hanukkah fell on Thanksgiving this year, and that is extremely rare. The two holidays basically never coincide, but this year they did. Maybe there's a message in that for us in these dark times, for America, and for our friend and ally, Israel.